Leaving narcissism and why I decided to move abroad. In a previous video, I've talked about a number of reasons about why I decided to move abroad, but this video is going to be dedicated solely to the topic of narcissism. Really quick, I am in a new location and it is by a busier area, so you may hear some background noise, so I apologize in advance for that. And I also want to say I was going to do a video compiling some of my favorite places while I was in Accra, Ghana, but this topic has been on my heart for a while and I've kind of debated doing something on this topic because I know that narcissism is a very popular topic. There's a lot of information, some of it accurate, some of it not so much accurate, and I just debated if I wanted to contribute to the topic and my perspective, but I have decided that I am going to contribute to the topic. I'm going to talk about my perspective for what narcissism is, and I'm going to really be clear about in what ways I'm talking about narcissism because of the weight and the gravity of the topic. And you know, if this is a topic that kind of drew you to the video, you probably may have had firsthand experience in dealing with a person who is operating from highly narcissistic attributes, or a workplace that is structured from a place of operating with narcissism at its foundation, or living in a country where it operates with narcissism at its foundation. And I do know firsthand how violent and how problematic and how painful those experiences can be. So throughout this video, I'm going to really encourage you to please take care of yourself. If you feel yourself getting activated, if you feel yourself feeling waves of any strong emotions, please prioritize yourself. Please tend to yourself with compassion because, again, I have lived experience and I know what this topic can bring up for me. And I want to be very mindful, very caring, and very careful as I approach this topic because I understand the gravity of it. So I also have notes because, again, this is such a serious topic that has so much tied to it. I want to make sure that I'm providing a proper structure. I want to provide proper definitions and be very clear about what it is that I'm communicating. And I want to do so in a way that's not overwhelming as possible, as much as possible, because, you know, again, in my lived experience and interacting with either a person operating from a high level of narcissistic traits or being in a workplace or being in a country or wherever it may be, I tend to experience, among other things, a sense of being very overwhelmed. And so the last thing I want is for this video to evoke that type of experience for you, okay? So you will see me looking at notes because, again, I want to be very clear about what it is that I'm talking about and have very clear parameters and boundaries around it. And I just want to provide as much of a safe space for both of us to explore this topic together. Again, I apologize for the background noise. Here comes a loud truck. It is what it is. So before we get in, and if you watched my other videos, you know that I always give a disclaimer, but for today, I'm going to give an especially strong disclaimer because of the nature of this topic and because of the impact of this topic on so many people's lives and how difficult it is to survive being in relationships with someone or entities that are operating from high narcissistic traits, all right? So my disclaimer with my full chest is, yes, I am a licensed mental health professional. However, I am not your licensed mental health professional, and nothing, absolutely nothing here is meant to be therapy. It is not meant to replace therapy. It is not meant to diagnose. There's nothing about diagnosing in this video. That is not what this video is about or aiming to do. And it absolutely does not replace your own relationship with a mental health professional. So if you do find that during this video or after this video, some things are kind of lingering and are feeling overwhelming for you, I will personally recommend that you please find a mental health professional of your own to process, to work through, and to heal through those things. This video is not meant to do that. It is not prescriptive. It is not therapy. All right. I'm saying especially hard because I have witnessed other spaces that explore narcissism where it does cross that line and it can be extremely harmful. And I want to make sure that I'm doing no harm. All right. I just want to provide my perspective in case any of it resonates for you. And then at the end, I'm going to really touch on especially why I'm exploring this topic, given the state of things in the United States and as it ties to me choosing to live abroad for an indefinite period of time while folks figure out or don't figure out what's going on over there. Okay. So let's get into it. Let's start with some clear definition. So narcissism, it is a buzzword. It is all over social media. People use it in sentences passively. It's used in a whole plethora of places. So understandably, there is a lot of confusion and variety of definitions for what narcissism is. So I want to be really clear about when I'm talking about narcissism, I am not talking about the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, all right? So that is found in a book called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is what mental health professionals use to diagnose people. And that term, the diagnosis, is called narcissistic personality disorder. There are various criteria that a person would have to meet to qualify. The person who diagnoses has to be trained in diagnosing, and it happens over an extended period of time of various questions, explorations, observations. There's so much information that goes into being able to diagnose a person, all right? So how I am speaking right now has absolutely nothing to do with narcissistic personality disorder or anything tied to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, or the DSM. I am not speaking in a clinical basis at all right? I want to be super clear about that, because I do oftentimes hear narcissism used in a way that is trying to diagnose other people. That is not what I'm doing here, all right? So now that I've clarified that, I want to be clear what I am speaking about when I say narcissism is that I am speaking about a person, a group of people, an entity, or a country that is operating from a foundation of high narcissistic traits, all right? So they're operating from that as a worldview or as a foundation. And there is a very high level of narcissistic traits being the at the foundation, all right? That is what I'm speaking about. And so this can be found, and I've kind of touched on it a bit, but I'm thinking of this in 4 categories where you can encounter this, or I've encountered this. Individual people who operate from this way of a high level of narcissistic traits, family structures that are operating as a narcissistic family structure. So they're operating from narcissistic traits as a foundation and how it's organized as a family. I'm talking about workplaces / organizations / industries that are operating from narcissistic traits, a high level of narcissistic traits. And then I'm talking about entire societies or countries that are operating in this way, all right? So there's 4 of them: individual, the family, the workplace / industry, the society, and the country. Again, this is how I conceptualize it. Let me pull back for a second. I didn't come up with this all on my own, right? These are not things that I just woke up and was like, you know what? No, I have been very blessed to be able to be exposed to various information. Yes, I have lived experience in all 4 of those categories, but I also have training as a therapist. And then I've also spent a significant amount of time researching, reading books, reading articles, watching videos, being in support groups, working with mental health professionals who specialize in supporting people who've been in relationship with either people or workplaces that have this dynamic. And so I am pulling all of that together. And this is how I personally understand it and format it and structure it in my brain as I move through life. And again, at the very end, I'll talk about why I really wanted to touch on this and why this has been on my heart so prevalently. So for me, I categorize being able to encounter or encountering this type of structure, this foundation, in those 4 different categories, all right? So again, the individual, the family structure, that workplace or work industry area, and then a whole society and a whole country, all right? I also want to say that in how I conceptualize it is that there can be a spectrum, that, how a person or all the way to how a country operates with narcissism at its foundation, it can be on a spectrum if it's all the way on the extreme area, or if it kind of deviates a bit and it's not as prevalent. And so some of these other aspects aren't as apparent and they lessen a bit, right? And so in my experience, where the US is right now is that it's oscillating towards the more extreme side. And when a country is operating from a highly narcissistic foundation, all of these other 3 categories tend to also amplify, because the society is structured in a way that benefits people who are operating from the same foundation and the same worldviews as the greater society is doing, right? So if someone is operating from a highly narcissistic foundation and the society rewards that, chances are they're going to get, hired as a director or as a CEO or as a principal of a school, right? Chances are that then that person is going to organize that school or that company or that place, that workplace, in a way that's in alignment with narcissistic traits as a foundation. Chances are that family is going to be headed by someone who operates from highly narcissistic traits, because that's what society is telling them, that's who gets to be the leader. And so now they're going to structure the family in a way that is in alignment with the foundation of narcissistic traits. You kind of see the theme here when a society is operated that way. So we see that a lot in the US. And as the US is skewing more towards the side of extreme narcissism and that as the foundation, we kind of see that coming up more and more in the workplaces and the family units and within individuals. I will say, and again, all this is my perspective and it's debatable, so feel free to debate me. But in my perspective, it is possible for the individual, for the family unit, and for the workplace or the industry to operate from a foundation of narcissistic traits without the greater society putting an emphasis on that. So I think it is possible for these to be, their own unit and to have that choice. Independent of the greater society having that as a foundation. But in my observation is, if the society is structured that way, the chances are it's going to be amplified that much more in each of the three categories. Okay. Great. I touched on that. I want to make sure I cover everything, and I'm going to be very structured. Okay. I also want to say that narcissistic traits in and of itself is not a bad thing. I think it's something that we all have to various degrees. Again, I'm thinking of it as a spectrum. Developmentally, we learn that there are times where these narcissistic traits are heightened, and that's actually beneficial to the developmental process. So you can think of toddlers, right? That's one area developmentally where the narcissistic traits are much higher. The terrible twos are called a terrible twos for a reason, right? You've encountered toddlers at that point. Everything is about I, me, mine, right? But it is a part of the developmental process, and of this toddler, going from being very attached to the primary caretaker and depending on the primary caretaker and being in close proximity, to now gaining this sense of individual identity and being able to separate. So it serves a function. The other place we see it developmentally, and there's other places, but these are kind of the two big ones, is high school. High school age kids, their narcissistic traits as a part of their developmental process tends to be much higher. Again, tend to be the favorite demographic for a lot of people because, it's not as pleasant to be around. But developmentally, it does, again, serve a purpose. It's this in-between phase of going into young adulthood and now a new level of coming into identity and exploring identity and being able to be independent in a way, but independent within community, right? So if they're being stuck in that place of operating from a high level of narcissistic traits, that's when we run into problems, all right? Covered that. Yes, covered that developmentally. Fabulous. I hope that's clear. So when I think of structuring and understanding and comprehending a person, a family structure, a workplace or industry, or a society and country operating from highly narcissistic traits, I think of it as, let's see if I can balance this because I have my iPad on me, as an upside down triangle, okay? So I think of it there's this foundation here, and don't turn upside down. And as a foundation, that's level 1 for me. All right. So there's 3 levels in how I conceptualize and organize, a person or persons operating from highly narcissistic traits. All right. So the foundation is level 1. What are those core aspects? And then level 2 would be the behaviors that are there. And then level 3 would be the tactics, right? So the level 1, the foundation, has kind of more concise attributes that are kind of unified across the board if someone or an entity or society is operating from narcissism as its foundation. Then we have the behaviors and kind of those categories that you see. And then the tactics, there's so many different tactics. And I am, in this, just a heads up on this video, I am going to be pretty thorough in covering the tactics because I think it's important information, especially given right now that it's very important for us to know and understand, all right? So let's dive into it. For each of the levels, again, this is my perspective, and this is my way of organizing information. There's different ways to organize it. And I think for each of the levels, there definitely could be more added to each level. But for me, if I'm assessing something and I'm assessing for safety, because being in a relationship with narcissism is not safe, that's my perspective, and it definitely is not safe for me. So if I'm assessing for safety, having this framework helps me to do that, all right? So for level 1, I would put on the foundation 3 things. I would put, number 1, a delusion of grandiosity. All right. So it's this entitlement. It's this belief that I am just better than all others. Right. A perfect example of that is the white supremacy delusion. Right. Some arbitrary attribute that a group of people possess, and this group has now decided, or some people in the group have decided, that because they possess this arbitrary attribute, that they are superior to all other humans because of it. Like, that is a delusion of grandiosity, right? And then it goes on to justify various behaviors, but it's coming from this place of just extreme delusion of grandiosity. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a delusion, okay? And tied to that, you could put, this entitlement and audacity and all of those things that are under that category, but that would be like one of the core foundations. Core foundation number 2, a distorted sense of what right and wrong is. So someone or a organization or a society that's operating with narcissism at the foundation, in that foundation aspect, there would be this rearranging of right and wrong, where right equals whatever that individual or entity wants, and wrong is anything that goes against what it is that they've decided that they want. You see how that is? Like, that's gross, right? So oftentimes, if you're dealing with an entity or a person or a family structure or a society that's operating from this place, you're going to be like, but wait, that's so immoral. Like, why would you behave that way? Like, that's not okay. That's not right. But for that entity, because their foundation is operating from a high level of narcissistic traits, they've reorganized a sense of right and wrong, where what I want, what the society wants, what the ruling class wants is right. And anything that is not in alignment with that now is considered wrong. Even if the rest of the society is operating from a much more grounded perspective of, community and of health and of life and of flourishing and of purpose and passion, whatever, it doesn't matter, because if they're operating from this foundation, it's only what it is that they've decided that they want, and everything else is wrong. So that's aspect number 2 that's on the foundation. Aspect number 3 would be the sense of inhumanity, like just inhumane. And this one's tough because for the rest of us who operate humanely and who operate with empathy, when you come up against this, it can be like, it can just break your brain. You're like, but I can't even conceptualize how you could possibly move this way, because like, what? Like, humans are important and they're valuable and they matter. So like, what? But this is an important aspect to be able to identify and understand, is that there is this aspect of inhumanity, and tied to that is a lack of empathy. So we hear this talked about a lot in a lot of spaces about narcissism, where there is this lack of empathy that's there, right? And there's a lot of other, like, I feel like smaller aspects of it, like this aspect of individualism, which, kind of ties all 3 of those together. There's just so many different attributes. I had another thought, but I just lost it in terms of the lack of empathy. But yes, so I would put that as like another one of the 3 in the foundation. So I put 3 of them there, but there's other parts that kind of tie to that, okay? So again, we have this delusion of grandiosity, which you have the entitlement, you have the audacity, you have all of that tied, the individualism, all of that tied into there. You have this distorted perspective of what right and wrong is, where it's been distorted to whatever I want is correct and anything that's not what I want is wrong. And then in there you have a deep sense of entitlement. And then you have this aspect of inhumanity and lack of empathy. Okay. I'm also going to name in this foundation, and again, I think these 3 core kind of touch on it for me, at least how I conceptualize it. But because a individual, a family, an organization / company / industry, or a society has chosen to operate with this as a foundation, and because it's operating from a place of delusion, the actual sense of identity cannot exist. That person, that entity, that society has chosen to be disconnected from who and what they actually are. And so if you've come across someone or an entity or society that's operating from high narcissistic traits, you may have experienced, and I know I definitely have experience, where you're like, who is this person actually? Like, it doesn't feel like there's any roots to it. Like, there's no substance. Like, it's not grounded and rooted in anything. Like, it feels like there's a sense of no culture, or there's a sense of no identity, or no, like, there's nothing real that's actually there. Because when you're operating from a sense of delusion as your identity, this grandiosity, it blocks that from happening. All right. And so that's going to be helpful when we talk about some of these tactics that come up. All right. So those are the 3 that I have in my category as a foundation for level 1. If you feel like there should be others in there, or if you've conceptualized as others in the foundation, I would love to hear from you and how you conceptualize it. Okay. I'm trying to speak closely to the microphone when something loud comes, so please bear with me. I apologize again for the background noise. Okay, so level 1 is the foundation. This is like the roots, as much as there are roots, because like we said, it's operating from a delusion, so how rooted can you be, right? But this is like the foundation. And then from that, birthed from the foundation, we now have the behaviors. And the behaviors I have put into 2 categories. Again, I think arguably you could put a lot more than 2 categories, but just for simplicity, and again, for me in assessing a situation, an individual, and environment, this helps me to have it concise so that I can more quickly identify what it is that I'm dealing with, so I know that I can be out, okay? So level 2 for me, I put behaviors, and there are 2 aspects, and the first is extreme manipulation. Like, my skin crawls just thinking about it, all right? We're gonna get to tactics and how this all ties into that. But in this behaviors, there's a extreme sense of manipulation. Like manipulation is just very present in the behaviors. And it can be covert, it can be overt, it can be sneaky, it can be woven into just minute aspects of life. It can be for greater purposes, but it's just extreme manipulation, which if you think about what we talked about with the foundation is, that makes sense, right? Like the foundation is already going against what's natural and what's healthy and what like makes sense as a community, right? You're operating from a delusion of grandiosity. You have rearranged what right and wrong is. Like your morals are completely shot, and what you want is the foundation of everything. And then you have this inhumanity and lack of empathy that's operating there, which again is like the opposite of how I believe that humans were designed to operate, right? Like it goes against survival tactics, right? And so it makes sense that in order to move through life and to be able to be in relationship with other people, that you would need to engage, not need to, but there would be the choice to engage in manipulative behavior to stay in relationship with people and to use people for your agenda of getting whatever it is that you've decided that you wanted, right? So there's this big aspect of manipulation. And the other part that I would put in there in level 2 in behaviors is vindictiveness. And again, it can be covert, it can be overt, it can be everything in between, but it is violent, whether it's obvious or not. And it's those like, for me, I find that the covert versions of it is the most dangerous because it's more sneaky, but it is violent, and it can be emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, on every level of a human. It can be vindictive and violent. And so these 2 attributes are there. Again, I'm thinking of this, sorry, I can't hold, go Court, go, hold the iPad. So I'm thinking of an upside down triangle, right? So this is the foundation, and it's like bleeding into now the behaviors. And those are the 2 that I would put in level 2 for that, okay? Again, if you have anything that you would add into level 2, which I'm naming as the behavior section, I would love to hear from you. So feel free to let me know if there's anything you would add for that, okay? Deep breath. Let me take a sip and let me pause and do an evaluation with how I'm feeling. And I'm going to invite you to do the same because, again, like I said at the start of the video, this is a topic that carries a lot of weight, especially if you have lived experience with dealing with this demographic in any capacity and in any of those 4 entities. So let's all pause and do a check-in and to see how we're doing. I'm going to sip my matcha. Ghana got me hooked on matcha again. I was going no caffeine for 2+ years, and then the love of my life found its way back into my life. So let me evaluate. Okay, I'm gonna take a moment and just put my feet flat on the ground. Roll my shoulders back. I feel some tension coming up in my shoulders. I invite you to do the same if that feels good and affirming for you. Okay, I'm gonna allow myself to be really supported by my chair. Just feel that I am supported, I'm grounded, I'm rooted, and I am safe. I'm safe. Okay. How are you feeling? If you need a pause and you need to take care of yourself, if you need to come back to this video, feel free. Yes, I want you to prioritize yourself because, again, I really do understand the weight of this topic, and I want to approach this in a way that is safe and responsible, okay? So please offer yourself that compassion first and foremost. Okay, level 3 for me are the tactics. And I'm going to give you a heads up that this is a long level, a long section, okay? I am going to pretty thoroughly touch on stuff, and afterwards I'm going to talk about why. Well, I guess I can talk about it now. I don't need to like keep the suspense. Like I can talk about it now. I find for me that in being able to protect myself from being back in a relationship, either with an individual, a community, a workplace, or a society that operates with narcissism at the foundation, and because it's so foreign to how I move through life as a highly empathetic, passionate, community-based, loving human being, it helps for me to be thoroughly educated on the tactics and to be thoroughly educated on the structure so that I can spot it. Because for me, I, kind of expect other people to be awesome too, right? And so when I come across different attributes, I then think like it's easy for me to justify it or to explain it away based on how I would approach or how other people that I'm in relationship with that are awesome would approach a situation. And because I've done that in the past, I have ended up much more closely in relationship with people or workplaces or entities that are operating with this as a foundation than I should have and I want it to be, and it's had a very deep impact on me. It's caused a lot of harm. And so for me, it's helpful to understand each of these things. And so whether it's me recognizing at a foundation level, like, ooh, I recognize that you kind of got like a grandiose sense of delusional grandiosity going on here, or if I recognize at a behavioral standpoint, like, ooh, like, where did I put behaviors? Yeah, like, oh, you like this place ends up operating with a lot of manipulation instead of just saying what a thing is and allowing people to choose how they want to move as a result and be fully informed. Or if I'm able to recognize that's a tactic and that tactic is familiar, let me investigate and see if those other levels are present as well so that I can make informed decisions, okay? So I am gonna be thorough about the tactics. Now, which each of these tactics, very often they are deployed with multiple at the same time, all right? And what we are witnessing on a country level in the US, I would say all of these are deployed. And there are so many other tactics. This is already a pretty long list. So again, please pause, please walk away if you need to, please take a break, please take a breather. But I especially want to name this because some of these go under the radar and some of these get explained away and they're easy to explain away. But then when you see how they work together and how it ties back into, you can see the behaviors that are underneath these tactics and how it ties back to this foundation of delusional grandiosity. And I've decided either individually, group-wise, company-wise, or country-wise, this is what I want. And so anything that's not in alignment with that, I'm gonna destroy. And that inhumanity, right? That violence and that vindictiveness in the behavior, once you're able to kind of identify that, then there's like, at least for me, I have so many aha moments. And I'm like, yeah, what we not gonna do? What we not gonna do is that. Okay, let's get into tactics. So the first I have in here is effortless lying. And again, with each of these tactics, I want to be clear that you still have the level 2 and the level 1. And I think with some of these tactics, this is where we kind of get into problems with people just throwing the word, you're a narcissist and they're narcissistic and that's narcissism all over the place, because there are tactics that, yes, people, groups of people, entities, and countries use, that other people who don't have that as a foundation also engage in. But because that behavior, the level 2, and because the level 3, the level 1 and the level 2 are not there, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is operating from a high level of narcissism, okay? So a person could lie because they feel unsafe. A person could lie because they're in a dynamic that is very harmful and they've been disempowered and exploited. There's a lot of reasons why a person could lie. A person could lie because, they are afraid of someone leaving. It's manipulative, it's problematic, but a person could lie for a number of reasons. With each of these tactics, again, I like to look for level 2 and level 1 underneath it to identify if it's tied to this narcissism as a foundation, okay? And again, like I said, with this as a foundation, usually there's gonna be a whole plethora of tactics being deployed. So, effortless lying, we will see in there. And oftentimes, all the times without any real authentic sense of accountability, nor remorse, right? Because again, if at the foundation I'm believing that I'm better than you, and if at the foundation I'm believing that whatever I want is right, and so therefore whatever tactics, whatever manipulation that I do, I'm fully justified because I'm getting what I want and I'm better than you, then why would I take accountability, right? And why would I feel any remorse? Why would I think that I'm doing anything wrong because I'm getting the thing that I want? So you'll see this effortless lying that'll happen prevalently as a tactic. All right, next one. These ones are pretty simple. Some of the other ones we got to break down a little bit more because they're a little bit more like, ooh. All right, creating confusion. Very common tactic. Yes, and this can look like the next one that I'm going to talk about. So creating confusion can be tied with lying. That's kind of like an amplification of that. So like now you're kind of questioning like, wait, how do you actually feel? What's actually true? What do you actually mean, right? It could be giving vague answers as a tactic of manipulation. But creating confusion is another way. We see that a lot right now in the US with even just accounts of what happened, right? So if a big news story breaks and there was a big thing that happened, all of the different voices that come out and all of the different details, no, but look over here and look over there and look over there, right? Like, so it creates confusion. And when a person is confused, it is easier to manipulate them. And folks, groups, entities, companies, and societies that are operating with narcissistic traits, high level of narcissistic traits at their foundation, know that. So this can be an intentional tactic of creating confusion. Also tied to creating confusion is a tactic of flooding. I'm calling flooding. There may be other names for it, but these are just the words that I'm using, okay? So flooding. So flooding can be a deluge of information. It could be making you engage in an excessive amount of time to exhaust you. It can be a deluge of emotion thrown at you, either the enormity of the emotion or the variety of emotions thrown at you. It can be a deluge of demands. It can be a deluge of problems that you have to hurry up and solve. And it can be a deluge of attacks. And it can be one, some, or all of those categories, right? And again, the goal is to overwhelm you. That's part of the manipulative tactic. It's also really inhumane, right? So yes, so if you, for instance, have been in a narcissistically structured workplace, and which I hope, I mean, unfortunately, I know people have experienced this, but if that workplace, that, supervisor, whoever has decided that they no longer want you to be there, sometimes these places will use this as a tactic. Like, now let me just like throw a whole bunch of problems for you to solve that you have to hurry up and fix. And I'm gonna create a short timeline so it feels like even that much more flooding, and you're set up for failure, right? Or if someone is like, you're about to, in a romantic relationship, if you're about to leave someone, right? And you're like, saying like, this is my boundary, or even if you're not about to leave them, but if you're establishing a boundary and you're saying, this is my boundary, I expect you to respect it, and then the response is to throw a whole bunch of emotion at you and to flood you with that emotion, and also paired with time, so over a long period of time, chances are it's gonna wear you down. You're gonna start to feel exhausted, and it's gonna take away from the energy you have to uphold that boundary, and it's also going to be, tying back to the previous tactic, it's gonna be confusing. It's gonna create confusion. So now you're overwhelmed, you're confused, and then this is ripe for other tactics to come in for manipulation to again align to this foundation of getting that person to operate in a way that is in alignment with that human, that company, that society that's operating from narcissism, to make you operate from whatever it is that they want, whatever they decided. You see how that tactic kind of works and how it ties with lying, confusion, and flooding? I feel like these three are very similar. They're different, but they're connected, right? And so these are very common tactics that happen. All right, so we've got the first three. And if you have questions about any of them, feel free to put them in the comment section, all right? I'm more than happy to answer. Again, these are my perspectives. If you have a different perspective on it, I would love to hear it too. This is just how I organize it for myself. Word salad, and this is a popularly used phrase, and basically it's where a person, entity, a society is expressing things in like literally where words are like tossed in a bowl and shaken up and spit out, and the resulting feeling when you hear it is like, huh? Like, what did you just say? Perfect example. Look at our current leaders of our country's speeches. Prime example of what word salad is. It is all over the place. It is disconnected, disjointed. It has the full spectrum of perspectives on one topic. Like, do you know about it? Do you not know about it? Do you kind of know about it? Are you confused about it? Does it exist? All of it is touched on, and it's all thrown in that one conversation. And yeah, a lot of times, and what I've seen, I still see to this day, but especially earlier on, justified with it is, oh, the person just, they're not good with words, or maybe they're confused, or it's their age, or it's just how they communicate, or they don't actually mean that, right? Word salad is a tactic. It is a tactic. Oh, it's a tactic. Yeah, and I see so many demographics get away with it. Yes, but word salad is a tactic. And let me tell you how it works. That person, that company, that family structure, that society or country absolutely knows how to construct a sentence, a paragraph, and a whole monologue in a way that is clear and concise and makes sense, right? But the reason why individuals, entities, societies with this foundation use word salad as a tactic is to create confusion and to be able to assess what is a way in with you, right? So let's say, for instance, I am wanting to date someone and I find that person and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if they're gonna like me, but if I have this as a foundation, they're what I want. So I've decided that's right? So, and my behavior, highly manipulative. So I'm gonna do whatever it takes. So I'm gonna use a tactic of word salad, and I am going to assess what are the things that make them tick and that would make them like me. So I'm gonna say a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm gonna put the whole spectrum, and I'm gonna evaluate what stuff that they like. And as they respond, like let's say I'm talking about chocolate, right? I love chocolate. But maybe like they're looking for a partner that does not like love chocolate, because that's would never work for me with a partner if they didn't love chocolate. Well, actually it might work because that would be more chocolate for me. I've digressed, okay? So I'm speaking to them and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, like I went to the chocolate factory and I love the chocolate. And I mean, what is chocolate really? You know, like people get like, they indulge on it and they get addicted. And, but the cacao bean, it's an antioxidant, but you know, like I don't like the smell of it, but you know, it's tasty and my taste buds like it. And, but do you have dessert every day? Like you don't need dessert, right? But yeah, I was playing at the park but yeah, chocolate, I like milk chocolate, but no, I don't really like chocolate. It's not really good. I just, you know, yeah, I'm not a sweets person. Like, what did I just say? That's hard for me. That's hard for me to do, right? So now I've just put everything out there. I've gone from I love chocolate, it's good for you, it's bad for you, I don't like chocolate, I'm not a sweets person, I love sweets, I have it with every meal, I don't have it with every meal. I've just given you everything, right? And so now the person's response is gonna give me information on what I can latch to. So if the person is like, yeah, oh, okay, all right, so yeah, I mean, I'm not really a sweets person, and you know, I tried chocolate, you know, as a kid, and then just never really clicked, and I haven't stayed with it. And then I can be like, oh yeah, no, we saying the same thing, I said that too. Like I literally just said, like, you know, don't really like it for every meal because I said it in the spectrum. So really, like as a tactic, word salad is throwing everything at the wall or at that person or at that group of people or at that entity to see what sticks and then using that information to manipulate. Isn't that crazy? The other part of it is too, like if you're dealing with a public figure, sorry, a siren is coming by. I hope it's not too loud. But if you're dealing with a public figure, then it's going to be loud. There we go. Okay. If you're dealing with a public figure, then you can pull out whatever quote you need to pull out to manipulate the narrative because they literally said all of it. They said the whole spectrum. If now we're moving into a place where society is honoring and venerating chocolate, you literally now have quotes of you saying, I like chocolate, it has antioxidants, and that's a direct quote that you can use. You see how that works? So no, it is not that the person cannot, you know, create a concise sentence or communicate a clear thought. It is used as a manipulation tactic. So word salad. All right. The slow boil. Again, there are probably other names for some of these tactics. This is just how I'm wording it for myself. But the slow boil is what I observe as a very big tactic that is happening right now. And for me, this one's really concerning, all right? So the slow boil, and how I'm gonna describe it is like, let's say you start here and what you're acclimated to, okay? Yes, a person will walk by with a bell ringing right now. Got it and understood. Okay, so the goal of the slow boil is to desensitize you. I might have to pause. Where are we at? Are we passing or are we still going? Okay, the ringing has stopped for now. I think they're trying to pull in a big truck, so it may come back soon. So apologies for that. So the goal of the slow boil is basically to desensitize you as circumstances escalate to a horrific place, all right? It is like, for instance, if you are cooking crab, live crab, if you turn it all the way up to high, they're gonna jump out, they're gonna be free, they're not gonna be cooked, right? But if you slowly turn up the temperature, then they stay and they end up getting cooked. All right. I will say there's one nuance in how I conceptualize a slow boil as it's applied to society or individuals, family structures, companies, workplaces, industries, is that it has, like, for me, can you see my hand? This do-do-do, this do-do-do, this do-do-do, this do-do-do, this type of pattern. So for instance, you start here and what you are comfortable with, what you have a tolerance for, right? And so then let's take it on a country level, a societal level, or a ruling class level. So the ruling class who's operating with narcissism and high narcissistic traits as their foundation is trying to see what they can get away with, right? So they start attacking our transgender siblings, right? And no one's saying anything. Okay, so they up the ante and they start, doing book bans, anything that's about, gender identity or attractional orientation. We're going to attack that too, right? Oh, okay. The greater society or the group of people that I deem as important and of most service to helping me get what it is that I want, they're not pushing back, so I can keep going, right? Okay, now it's spilled over into that demographic, and now they're really, really angry, and now they're pushing back. Okay, so now that group of people or that society or that ruling class is like, all right, so let me bring it back down a bit. And let me just stay here for a second and just keep it here until they calm down, they forget about it. Maybe I, employ the tactic of confusion or the tactic of just straight up lying or the tactic of flooding so that I can take their attention off this thing and I stay here, right? Okay, they're back down, the temperature's back, but notice how this spot is now higher than this spot was before, right? Okay, society breathes a sigh of relief. Not all of society, because of course those with the most marginalized identity knows what's up. They've been harmed this whole time and it's not okay, right? But the demographic that they've deemed as most powerful and most helpful for getting what it is that they've deemed that they want, they've gone to being pacified and to no longer applying pressure, right? So then okay, things have cooled off enough. And then they start bringing it back up. Let me start with this demographic that most people are not going to protect, right? Most people are not going to say something. Maybe it's someone who's not within the country legally. And so, all right, I can convince enough people that yeah, they're not supposed to be here. Maybe I'll add one other attribute oh, they're violent. So, people really won't push back as I up the ante, right? And so then okay, let's expand it because we not enough pushback from the demographic that, I want to make sure I don't make too angry, right? So we up it. Now we're all the way at the point of we're going door to door and people are having to walk around with their passports and all of the identities, and it doesn't matter who it is. Oops, now we've upped it to citizens, and of that demographic, now they're being targeted and now they're being detained. And now they're really upset again. So let's bring it back down. Let's pretend like we're apologizing. This demographic, the entities, the individuals, the companies, the societies that operate with narcissism at a foundation, like we talked about before, they're not going to actually apologize and take accountability because they believe whatever it is that they want is correct. And they have the delusion of grandiosity, right? So they're not going to apologize. They don't really mean it, but they're going to give the illusion. They're going to lie, right? They're going to give the illusion of apologizing. They're going to make you feel like, oh no, they're changing tactics because they're taking accountability. This demographic does not. This demographic does not take accountability, right? But they'll give the illusion and they'll bring the temperature back down. Again, maybe they'll confuse you. Maybe they'll just straight up lie to you. Whatever it is, they'll deploy other tactics. And the temperature is back down and they go back up and up and up. And this keeps going. And now literally after only, 1, 2, 3 iterations of that, we are all the way up here. We started down here. This is what we would tolerate. Where's my fingers? This is what we would tolerate. And now we're all the way up here as a society. That is literally what we're watching in real time, right? You can literally go back, and I know it's hard because flooding as a tactic has been used by this administration to a T among all of the other tactics I've talked about. But you can go back to, I don't even know. We can go back as far as we want to. We can go back a year. Really, any period of time you can go back and see how far we have deviated from the starting point, right? Right now, the focus is on getting frozen water out of Minneapolis. That's where the focus is right now. That's what we're fighting for. Whereas back here, we were fighting for our boundaries are so much bigger and so much more expanded and so much more was contained in what's absolutely not acceptable. Using the term illegal aliens is inhumane. That's where we were before. And there were so many other things that were there. But now we have been desensitized and we have been flooded and we have been lied to, and there's so much confusion and there's been so much weight put on who matters and who doesn't matter. And there's so much going on that it feels overwhelming that now the thing that we're attaching to right now is getting frozen water out of one city. You see how far? Before it was, I would say maybe here. Before it was not having the National Guard deployed to cities, right? Before it was frozen water shouldn't be operating at all in our cities, right? And now it's so small and so minuscule what we're focusing on, which is getting frozen water out of one city right now. Mind you, frozen water is in all over the place, right? But do you see that deviation and how that pattern works, right? And we just saw the recent pushback that's happened with the, I think there's a big shutdown that's supposed to happen. What's today? Today's Thursday. A big shutdown that's supposed to happen tomorrow, with, all of the demands and the threatening of not funding and all of the stuff that's going on, right? We're here. Now we're here, right? Now there's a pushback. So now there's a de-escalation. Now you see in the news, oh, well, the person that was leading the initiatives, they've been removed from that position and put elsewhere, and they're probably going to retire. And now I'm having talks with, the leadership and the government over there. And, it gives the facade of remorse, and it gives the facade of changing direction. It gives the facade of, oh, I made a mistake and I'm going to pull back. That's not what's happening. It's that there was enough pushback, and now they're just they're just bringing down the temperature a little bit, not back down to here, right? They're just bringing down the temperature a little bit, and then it's going to go back up. I'm off the charts. I'm not even on the phone anymore, right? It's going to go back up. And it's going to be amped up again, right? That is what the slow boil is. And that is what we're witnessing in real time at a country level. You can experience this at a company. You can experience this in a family unit. You can experience this with an individual, whether it's a colleague or friendship or romantic partner, whatever it may be, right? So this is a very common tactic. And I really want to touch on this tactic because that is what we are witnessing in real time. And one of the most dangerous things that can happen is for us to forget here what we stand for, who we are. What is a hell? Absolutely not. Absolutely no. That is the most dangerous thing. That's when we become disconnected. That is when we become, well, we'll talk about some other attributes that we can become, but that's when it's very problematic. So we never want to forget this point right here. Okay? All right. So that is the slow boil. I'll touch briefly on guilt tripping. I think this is one that's pretty commonly talked about, so I don't think I need to dive too much into it, but basically convincing you that you are wrong for something that you are not. It is a manipulative tactic. I think demographics, other than demographics that operate with narcissism as its foundation and worldview, also do guilt tripping for a variety of reasons. So again, any one of these tactics does not necessarily mean that that person, entity, workplace, or society is operating with high narcissistic traits as their foundation and as a worldview. It can happen for a variety of reasons, but I will say that guilt tripping is also deployed as a tactic within narcissism in these entities that I'm talking about. And right now, I think as I experience it is that I do still get guilt tripped for choosing to leave the country. What did I do wrong? Because I'm pretty sure that, pretty sure my ancestors built the infrastructure of that country unpaid. I'm pretty sure we did. So if I want to leave, I'm sorry, what am I guilty of? Right. So if you are thinking of leaving the country and taking a break as a Black person, and moving abroad permanently for an extended period of time, and you come across that, I just want you to understand that that is coming from a societal level, a society, the US, that is operating with narcissism as its worldview, right? And that guilt tripping is tied to a behavior that we talked about, manipulation. Now this is a tactic coming directly from that. You ain't got nothing to feel guilty about. You didn't do nothing wrong. You wanna be safe. You wanna thrive. You wanna protect your joy and your peace. You wanna be in community and be able to breathe a sigh of relief. You want your heart health to be okay. Huh? Where's the guilt? What are you supposed to be guilty about? Guilt tripping, a tactic. Second one is projecting. This one can be done very covertly, which is why I'm also naming this. So projecting, again, another buzzword that people throw around a bit, and I don't really love that. So I want to be clear with the definition. Projecting is placing a problematic attribute that person, I'm going to say on an individual level, but we know it can be expanded to the other three categories, but that individual actually possesses. But instead of them dealing with it and taking ownership and accountability about it, they have taken that attribute and put it onto you and placed it onto you and made you responsible for it. Okay? even though those are not attributes that you possess, those are not attributes that you have, right? But this projecting comes, again, from distorting reality. It's also, can be tied into lying, but it's manipulative, all right? And the example I'm gonna give for this one that I wrote down is the lazy stereotype for Black folks. That very popular lazy stereotype that has been deployed for generations and generations, that Black people are lazy. And like I just said earlier, mind you, Black folks built the infrastructure as unpaid labor of that entire country because the colonizers and the enslavers did not want to do the work, did not have the education, the skill set, or the know-how, or the talent, or the character, the moral ability to be in relationship and community with others, right? And so they have projected this identity of Black folks being lazy. That is projection. That is prime projection, yeah? Okay. Also important because this can then distort reality if when it's deployed as a tactic covertly, right? It can be very insidious. It can cause you to doubt yourself and question yourself and be like, wait, who am I? Am I the problem? And then it can be wrapped into that, right? And then that's allowing that person, that structure, that company, that entity, that society to move towards what it is that they want at your expense. So an important thing to be aware of. So those are popular ones, okay? Okay, so those are kind of like popular ones that I've talked about. These ones, I think, with the exception of one where you probably heard the language before, but maybe not the correct definition, I think these ones are a little less known. Again, I know this is a thorough section with the tactics. If you need to pause, take a moment, please feel free, all right? So these ones are a little bit more nuanced in how they work. So this next one I'm gonna talk about is oftentimes a cycle. And if it's not a cycle, it oftentimes is one goes into the next, And it does mirror another one that I'm going to talk about later with language that you probably heard before, okay? But I'm going to just use regular language to talk about it first instead of getting into psychotherapy, therapy speak stuff that oftentimes happens and social media and all that stuff that I do not want any parts of, okay? So this next one is this idealizing, putting you on a pedestal. I'm going to talk on an individual level for right now, though this can happen for groups of people. Putting you on a pedestal, then undermining, defaming you, and then discarding of you. Okay, so again, it's this like period of time of like singing your praises. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. You're the best thing to ever happen to me, to us, to society, whatever it may be. We need you. You're so talented. You can save us, da da da. And then it comes into this space of undermining you, defaming you. It oftentimes comes out of the blue to the target. The target's like, where did this come from? I didn't see this coming. I thought I was good. I thought y'all really appreciated me. And then that can like really throw you off balance. And then that's used to justify your discarding to the greater population because now you've gotten everyone on board and now you've been discarded. Okay. So this again can be a cycle because after a person or a group of people have been discarded, they can then go back into the, oh, but you're so talented and da-da-da after a period of time and then to go back through that cycle. Or after you or that group of people have been discarded, they can find a new target and put in that pocket of you're so amazing, you're so awesome, da-da-da, defamation, undermining, discarding, all right? This is a very common manipulative, insidious, vindictive, inhumane tactic that is used by individuals, structures, companies, societies that have high narcissistic traits as their foundation. This is a very common cycle. And if you've experienced any one part of it, you may not recognize that it's all tied together because it can happen very quickly. It usually, especially that undermining part of it, comes out of the blue and you're like, what? I thought I was good. I thought you loved me. Let me look at what my example was. I have this example, but I'm going to use a different example. I'm going to use a workplace example. So if you're dealing with a workplace or have dealt with a workplace that is narcissistically structured and has high narcissistic traits as their foundation, this is a common one. Yeah, so you come in as a new employee and they are just like, oh my gosh, you're so talented. We're so grateful to have you. You get stuff done. You're amazing at what you do. You're so talented, da 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 da, right? And so in response, you're like, oh my God, okay, cool, thank you. And then like you feel motivated to like make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's and really complete amazing work and you do a great, excellent job, right? And then out of the blue, you're CC'd on an email and it's discussion of putting you on a performance improvement plan. And they're like, you know what? You're really missing the mark. You've been late. You've been slacking on your work, and like, you're not leading meetings properly. You're not meeting these objectives, da da da. And you're just like, where did that come? Like, and why am I in an email CC'd with everyone, including the bosses of the bosses of the bosses? Like, where did this come from? Like, the last thing I heard is that you're so grateful that I'm here and that I'm talented and I'm such an excellent fit and I'm gonna really elevate, the function of this like team or of this this department or whatever it may be, right? So it like undercuts you and you're just kind of like left on the defensive, like, and then you're kind of in this place of like questioning yourself of like, wait, did I miss something? Is there something? Am I not like child? And then that can escalate, and you're just kind of like caught without even knowing that that's coming and able to defend yourself and with proper preparation, and then that can be used for justification for your discarding. Okay. It's a painful experience. It's extremely violent. It's extremely vindictive. And like we talked about, this foundation level, this inhumane aspect, way of treating and lack of empathy, it is very much inhumane, right? To treat anyone, individual groups of people on a society level, any one of those four categories, it is violent. It is just purely violent. I talk about this a little bit later for similar wording, but that's been used very popularly, but I want to use just regular terms to talk about it. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Like what I'm kind of explaining and what that progression is. And then again, it can be like, oh, well, crap, we discarded of her and we can't quite refill her position. And that's gonna like hurt the bottom line and the productivity of things. So we might have to keep her for a little bit longer. So, oh my God, you're actually so talented and you've really done so much better. And I'm really appreciate that you took our feedback, to heart, and you've really seen a change in you. And so, you're doing good. You're really contributing to the team. Just straight up lying to you. And you're like shell shocked because you're like, what just happened? And now they put you back on the cycle until they're ready to discard you again. It's disgusting. It is disgusting, but this is a popular tactic. Tied to this, oftentimes deployed together with this tactic, is a mimicking of traits and attributes that the individual, family structure, whatever it may be. I'm going to talk on an individual level right now just to be able to understand and conceptualize it. So let's talk on an individual level, but mimicking your personality traits or just traits and attributes, and then them passing it off as their own, and then accusing you of being the one who's copying them or stealing them to the public or to whatever demographic that they've, decided that they want to appeal to because they're using them for getting whatever it is that they've decided that they want. And then to help solidify it that it's their own. Okay. And this usually can happen in the part of the cycle where the undermining and defaming is happening, right? And so this like putting on the pedestal can parallel with this like mimicking of your attributes so that they're taking it on as their own. And I'm going to talk on an individual level for right now, like I said. So come back to the foundation, right? So the delusional sense of grandiosity. And remember what I said about if you are choosing as an individual or group of people or society to operate with this as the foundation, you have then decided to completely detach. Hi, little squirrel. There's a little squirrel coming to join the conversation. It's so cute. I mean, outside it's cute. If it was inside, I would be freaking out. But okay, sorry. So you have decided to disconnect from who you actually are as a person, from your culture, individual characters, whatever. And you now are an empty shell, right? The society is an empty shell. The industry workplace is an empty shell. There's no culture to it. The family structure is an empty shell. There's no like connection to, generational wisdom. That individual is an empty shell. They are not connected to their purpose and who they are and who they were created to be, right? You've now replaced it with this way of operating for a variety of reasons, right? So you're empty shell. And because, I'm gonna speak on an individual again, that individual is an empty shell, they have to fill it up with something. And so they are going to choose to fill it up with attributes that's going to gain them points for whatever demographic they've decided to get points from, right? So they're going to get, let's say they're going to get points from, they're going to get points from appearing to be very, perfect example. Let's talk about affordability. Did you see that meeting between the new New York City mayor and the leader of the US right now? Yeah. And how after that meeting, the leader of the US's favorite word was affordability, right? Mind you, the new New York City mayor has been saying affordability in its campaign and everyone's been asking for it and like it's a common thing. But then when you listen to the speeches afterwards, the leader said, it's my favorite word. I always talk about affordability. That's always been important to me. Da, 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 da. That is classic example of, oops, sorry, I lost my place in my notes. That is classic example of mimicking traits and passing it off as your own to gain favor, to gain the social currency with the demographic that you deemed important, right? It's all a part of manipulation. It's all a part of getting what it is that you want. It is not rooted in anything that is true and innate to who that person is. It's just solely about that because they're an empty shell. And so now they go to extract things from other people and other entities that they deem as important, right? Like a vampire, like literally sucking your personality out of you and passing it off as their own. And then so that they can't get called out on it, so that they can't like, those people that they're trying to trick and trying to manipulate, that they don't see like, wait a minute, that wasn't ever yours. That's actually, now you enter into this pattern of now I'm going to defame you. Now I'm going to undermine you. And then I got to discard of you so that there can't be a side-by-side comparison. And so people can only think that I am the one that has this trait, right? It will be interesting to see how things play out demographically between the leader of the US right now and the new mayor of New York City. Because when I saw that and I heard that pattern, everyone was like, wow, I can't believe the meeting went so well. I saw it and I was like, of course it did. Because I understand the tactics. I understand the behaviors. I understand the foundation. Of course, that's how the meeting went. And of course, he was going to mimic those traits, right? But we probably will soon see the defamation, the undermining, all of that whole campaign go on very soon, and we will see a discarding. I don't know how bad that discarding is going to be. I pray it's not as bad as it could be, because I know there were some things said about what it would be in the future, but we will watch it in real time and see what happens, all right? But this is another tactic that's deployed. All right. I know this is a long one. Thank you for staying with me. Okay. All right. So we have mimicking traits and attributes and passing off of their own. And that's oftentimes tied to the tactic before that I spoke about. All right. This is a term that's used pretty often when speaking about, narcissism and people and entities and societies that operate with high narcissistic traits, which is called flying monkeys. It's from The Wizard of Oz and how, the flying monkeys were used to do like all the evil work. Right? But they weren't the actual like root of the problem, but they were deployed to act out the whatever harm, whatever violence, whatever ensuring that whatever that root person or root society or root structure wanted to have done. And so this is also a very common tactic that you see. Right now we're seeing in real time that frozen water is being used as the flying monkeys, right? That's the newest iteration of flying monkeys. Before it was the National Guard. Before it was, voters and supporters that, wore the red hats, right? I won't even say before, still currently, right? So those are flying monkeys, and they are deployed to act out the will of that individual, that structure, that company, that society, or that ruling class, right? So they do the dirty work. Those are flying monkeys. And you see it in family structures too. So let's say you have a narcissistically structured family structure where it's operating with narcissism at the foundation, and the head of the family is accepted that as their foundation and worldviews. A lot of times you can see the other parent being the flying monkey who's, acting out the punishment, or is acting out the manipulative behaviors, or acting out, whatever it is to get the rest of the family to act in alignment with what the head of the family has decided they want, whatever it may be, right? That can be maybe not just the other parent. It could be siblings at some point in time. It could be extended family. It could be aunts and uncles. It could be whoever. But you do see this very often in any one of those categories. But that's just another example to see it. That is a tactic. All right. Very, very similar to flying monkeys is triangulation. Again, this is another like common term that's used a lot. So flying monkeys can be like a whole team of folks. They're deployed to do the dirty work. Triangulation is where a third person is brought in. I'm going to do individual again, just for conceptualizing. So let's say you're establishing a boundary with someone, an individual who is operating with a high level of narcissistic traits, and you know that what's happening is not okay and it's not correct. And so that person who's operating with narcissism at their foundation can triangulate, which means bringing in a third person who shares their viewpoint, who sometimes can also be a flying monkey, and it's oftentimes a person that they know that you will think like, oh, but they're grounded, they're reasonable, like I trust their opinion, right? And so they can use that as leverage to make you question yourself and doubt what you know to be true and doubt what you know you need for yourself, right? I think a really poor attempt of triangulation that's happening right now, and I have to laugh because it's not it is laughable, but it's also just sick. But it's also ridiculous. It's what's happening with Nicki Minaj right now. Like, I think this is a very sad attempt of triangulation. I know that the Barbs are strong and very convicted in how they feel about, you know, their queen. Are y'all okay? Y'all all right now? Okay. Because that's an attempted of triangulation, right? Of someone who the demographic that you're trying to manipulate sees as someone that you care about, you know, you're a fan of, whatever it may be, and then you're going to bring them into the conversation and say, see, they believe how I do, which means I'm right, and you should believe me because I just brought in this person that you think is awesome, and so you should follow suit. I don't think it's working very effectively. Maybe I'm wrong. I would never classify myself as a Barb. That's not shade. That's just fact. Please don't come after me, but I wouldn't. So it's not effective for me. Maybe it is for those that do classify themselves as a Barb. I don't know. If you're a Barb, let me know how it's working. But that's an example of triangulation, okay? Whew. This is a lot. These are a lot of tactics. I really want to be thorough, though. I really, really want to be thorough because what we are up against is so violent, so abusive, so insidious, but it can be so powerful to have the education of what it is that you're dealing with, to be able to categorize it and to be able to name it. Because then you can start making choices in what you engage with and in, and what you don't, and how you protect yourself, all right? This video is not gonna get into that because for me, that would be crossing a line that I don't intend to cross, right? Like I want, if you need to do that with a mental health professional, to please do it there. Like, this is not meant to be prescriptive. This is not meant to be any of that, all right? So I'm not gonna talk about that in this video, but I just wanna give information and how I conceptualize it, as far as the 3 levels and the 4 different tiers or entities that you can see this enacted, and then name some of the tactics that I find most helpful to keep in mind when something just don't feel right, okay? I have a few more. I am going to talk about gaslighting. I always like cringe when I put words down that I know have become very popular on social media because I'm like, oh, sorry. Yeah. And I think this is another term, and there's only one other. That's another term that gets thrown out a lot and used in ways that that's not what it means. Okay. So the term gaslighting comes from a very old movie. I've seen clips of it, and I've read the story, but I haven't seen the full movie. But basically the movie, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, I may be wrong, and I'm more than happy to take correction, that there's a husband and a wife, and the husband is trying to manipulate the wife, and I think he slowly dims the lights, like the lights are gas, like it's back in the day, right? It's not electricity, like you flip a switch, but it's like gas, and he slowly dims them bit by bit, and the wife every time is like, isn't it darker in here? Like, why are the lights so dark? And then the husband's like, what are you talking about? It's not dark. Like, it's normal. Like, nothing's wrong. And then, like, over an extended period of time, intentionally, he's trying to make her feel like she's lost her sense of reality. And he keeps dimming it and dimming it and dimming it until it gets to the point where she believes that she's no longer sane and she's having a psychotic break. So that's where the term gaslighting comes from, all right? So no, gaslighting is not synonymous with telling a lie. Like, a person who tells a lie is not necessarily gaslighting, all right? So gaslighting is the methodical and intentional work being done with the purpose of causing a person to question, to doubt, and to become disconnected from reality. That's what gaslighting is. You hear how inhumane and how insidious that is? Like, it's disgusting. It is vile. Like, it is heavily manipulative. It is heavily vindictive. We get to that foundation. It is inhumane, no empathy. Like, it only could come from a place of delusional grandiosity to think that you have the audacity to do that to a human or a group of humans. Like, what? It is disgusting. That is what gaslighting is. And I think the example that I wrote down here is Black women and us sounding the alarm of where we were headed, and us now being where we sounded the alarm decades ago. I mean, really with an S, like, let's be honest, right? And it's not just us. There's so many other demographics where this is the case, but I'm gonna use that as an example because I'm a Black woman and I was one of them who sounded the alarm. And the weaponizing of the angry Black woman trope to shut us up and to make us question our reality and to disenfranchise us and to keep people from listening to us. That is, as a society, on a society of the US that operates with the foundation of a high level of narcissistic traits, that is what the society has intentionally, purposefully, over a long period of time done to disconnect us from what we know to be true, which is we know a thing before a thing happens. Our intuition is next level and untouched. Like, what you mean, right? That is gaslighting. We have been gaslit on so many levels. But this is one example that I'm using of what that is, right? It is methodical, it is intentional, and it is with the intent to disconnect the person or persons from reality and from their sense of knowing, and to cause you to question and doubt what you know to be true. Disgusting. It's disgusting, and it is a very popular tactic, okay? We are down to the final two. All right, here's the final two. Now, here's the one that I was mentioning that is very similar to what I talked about earlier in terms of that linear progression of idealizing on a pedestal, undermining and defaming you, and then discarding of you, okay? But I'm now going to use language that you've heard before to get a little bit deeper into it, and I'm going to use the language of love bombing, which I know I cringe because it's been used so often, breadcrumbing, and discarding cycle. And this is a cycle, like I talked about before, either with the same person or persons, or you get replaced and the next group gets put in and put through that cycle. All right. So love bombing is a term that's used very popular, but I want to define it. What it is. Again, love bombing is for the purpose of manipulation. The goal is to manipulate, all right? So it is flooding you with, and these are some examples, there's more that fit, but flooding you with attention, it can flood you with praise, with gifts, with rewards, etc. And the goal is to get you to be quickly addicted to it and that person or persons or entity or society or ruling class, so that they can use it as leverage to manipulate how you behave and how you act. That, all of those components must be present for it to be love bombing, all right? So it is the goal to get you to be addicted so that they can use it as leverage to control you. We can get real deep into it and how that impacts dopamine, which is a hormone, which is a part of your reward system, and how that can be extremely insidious when this is deployed with effectiveness, and how like the yanking away of the reward and bringing it back in intermittently, and how that very powerfully impacts behavior and manipulates behavior. It's studied. It's how our timelines work when we're scrolling. How you have this intermittent reward that happens. So sometimes if you don't open an app, I don't know if you ever noticed this. I like to observe social media apps quite a bit, but I recognize this. So if I don't open, let's say I've deleted TikTok because what is going on with TikTok? I'm good. I literally deleted it, and that hurt because I love the dance challenges, but TikTok, we're done. So TikTok for me is like the easiest to train algorithm wise. It has been. Again, don't know what's going on right now, but before it has been. But if I don't open the app of TikTok for a while, and then I go back to open it, it'll show me a number of videos that it knows that I like. And I'm like, good job, TikTok. Now, if I wasn't purposely trying to train my TikTok, I would be like, oh my God, and getting these dopamine hits, which I still get, right? And so now I'm getting my reward system activated. Like, ooh, when I'm on TikTok, I get to like feel good things. I get to see really cool dance challenges and choreography. I get to laugh at silly videos. I get to see cute little babies, right? And then it'll like bring it to something else that like, I feel like my TikTok wasn't so much like this. I've heard some people's are. I actually use Instagram because I feel like Instagram does this very often. Instagram, I notice, it feels very manipulative in what it'll try to show me and try to sway me and try to like throw things to activate my nervous system. But it'll be like after getting me on this high and all of these like rewards, and then it'll be like this like punishment, right? And then like when I'm like, and then it'll come back with like a video or a topic that it knows that I like. And then it's sporadic. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to be a video that I'm really interested in. Obviously, there's so much more that goes into the technology of the timeline and all of that to keep us addicted. But this aspect of it, of having, unpredictable reward is very effective at making you addicted to a thing. All right, you can look up studies on it, you can go fact check me on that, but it is very effective. And this is a tactic that is deployed to a T. Okay, so that's why I'm putting these 3 things together. So I have love bombing, breadcrumbing, and discarding cycle. All right, because this love bombing gets you addicted to the reward. It activates this hormone. That's the last I'm probably going to talk on it from a scientific level, because I don't want to go too far into that, but basically it gets you addicted to the reward. And then there's this like pulling back that happens, and then you're like, wait, I need it, I love it, wait, this feels like I'm left outside in the cold without a blanket, and before I was under a nice warm weighted blanket and I was so comfy, and where did it go? Like, what do I need to do to get it back? And that's where the manipulation happens. That's where that person or entities are primed for being manipulated. Okay, and this is oftentimes paired with breadcrumbing. And so it gets you hooked to a thing, oftentimes through the tactic of love bombing. And again, that can be attention, gifts, praise, etc. It starts off strong and then it pulls away. And then you're like, what do I need to do to get it back, right? And then they come back with just not as much. So similar to the graph this graph that I showed you before, it's the opposite. So it starts up here, yeah? And then they pull back. And then you're like, wait, but I love that thing. Like, what do I need to do to get it back? And then they reward you just a little bit. But notice they only come up this high. Before it was up here, but now they only come back up to this level right here. And so then you're like, oh, whew, I got the thing back. Okay, cool. If I keep acting this way, I can keep having this, right? And then they pull back some more. And then you're like, oh my God, this doesn't feel good. What do I need to get it back? Or maybe you start to leave the relationship, or you start to look for new jobs, or you start to look up, how do I leave the country? And then they pull you back with like, okay, let me give you a little bit more, so that you have this morsel to satisfy that craving. And then you're like, okay, like, I mean, this does feel really comfortable. I don't know, maybe it's not that serious, maybe it's not that bad, I'll stay, right? But now you're down here. You started all the way up here, but now they're only down here. Now you're all the way down here, right? And this pattern keeps going until they're literally giving you a crumb. You went from having a 5-course meal to a crumb to sustain you. That's breadcrumbing. You see how manipulative that is? And when you pair that with love bombing, this high up here, and then you have sporadic rewards, but those rewards are just less and less. They're doing the bare minimum to keep you engaged. And I mean, like, you know, not to put anyone on blast, if you're trying to debate if you're trying to leave the country or not as a Black person, specifically speaking to specific demographics, if you're trying to leave as a Black person. But I oftentimes hear like, oh, but you know, like, I can get my medications here. Mind you, your copay is more than what I pay to get it straight out from the pharmacy across the street without any insurance, right? Or I don't know, what are the other things? Like, I got my car, like, right? Mind you, you're paying rent, what I would pay for rent in Southeast Asia, for your car insurance to have a car, and that's what's keeping you. Like, you all the way down here. You feel me? Like, that's the result of breadcrumbing, right? You started out all the way up here, and now we're down here as a result of breadcrumbing. So you see how love bombing and breadcrumbing go together, right? So it's like getting you hooked on the bare minimum. And it also makes it very easy to manipulate. Very easy to manipulate individuals, groups of people, and societies. And then we have the discarding cycle, which is when you are no longer in service of what that, remember, foundational level, whatever I want is right, whatever is not is wrong and deserves to be punished and discarded and to be harmed and to be thrown away and to be treated in the most inhumane way. Then you go into the discarding, like, I no longer need you, goodbye. That's it. So manipulative and so disgusting. But that is a very common tactic. Those 3 together, the love bombing, the breadcrumbing, and the discarding. And that's a cycle. So you see how that's similar to the other one I spoke about? I just wanted to really touch on those tactics, specifically with the actual definition of what they are, okay? And this is the last one. And I really want to end with this one because this is the one that after the elections in 2024, I had to sit with. And I've always felt this, and by always, I mean single digits, as a single digit age child. I was like, something ain't right here. And I don't know where or why I came to that conclusion. I don't know who and what I was exposed to, but for some reason, like at the age of 7, 8 or so, I was very clear on this, that something ain't right here. But this last one is future faking. This tactic is gross. disgusting. All right. And it can be deployed very covertly. And it makes it that much more dangerous when it's deployed very covertly. Okay. I'm going to use, I've debated which example to use, because one of them is very covert and I don't want it to feel like a sub, or like you're being called out, because again, when we're talking about any tactic, it's tied to the behavior, that middle, the manipulative and vindictive aspect, and then the foundation of this delusion of grandiosity, the reorganizing of what right and wrong is, and this inhumanity, lack of empathy, right? So if it's just a tactic by itself, you know, it's a tactic, it's problematic. Or if it's an occurrence by itself that really is just a string of events, then like we're not necessarily talking about this whole thing. So I just want to disclaim that. So I actually am going to use the individual example, but please understand, it's not a sub. This is a very covert way that it can be deployed. Okay. So if you're dealing with an individual, let's say it's let's say it's a romantic interest. We'll do it there. But it can be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be a colleague. All right. Let's do a work colleague. And let's say like you're in a relationship with them and, you know, you guys talk back and forth and like you share stuff that's going on for you and they share stuff that's going on for them. And at the beginning, it starts off as like, you know, there's some reciprocity there. Like you feel mutually supported, you feel supported, right? But let's say this colleague is operating with a high level of narcissistic traits as their foundation, right? So they've got level 1, level 2, level 3, all there, right? But now we're just using this tactic of future faking, right? And so now you guys are like, you know, talking back and forth about stuff, but you start to notice more and more that like, it feels like I am their dumping zone and everything that we talk about is about their problems, and that there's less and less space for me to have, you know, a safe space for me to also process things. Like it feels like that reciprocal nature is now skewed where I'm just a dumping zone, right? And so this person who's operating with that foundation, levels 1, 2, and now using this tactic, will use a tactic of future faking, which is, maybe they send you a message. Oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't, you know, gotten back to you about, you know, what you talked about, that work issue that you had. It's just that, you know, I haven't been feeling well and I've been sick, you know, so, but I when I'm feeling better, like, I'll definitely get back to you on it. And like, I'll, you know, I want to make sure I'm like a good listening ear to you too as well, right? Again, one off, not a problem. Life happens. Of course, it's understandable. And for us, this is why it's so dangerous, because it's so covert. For us with empathy, those that are grounded in who we are, know who we are and whose we are and why we are, and those of us who are great community members, we're like, of course, empathy. Oh my God, I hope you feel better. Do you need anything, right? They feel better. They never come back to offer that support. And there's never that reciprocity, right? And you don't quite notice it because like, you know, you're not wired to think that way. Like who would just lie about a thing and use it as like, you know, like you wouldn't operate that way, right? So you stay in the relationship and like, you know, they're coming to you. Maybe they don't come as hard with the issues and like using you as a dumping zone or using you for whatever it is that they're trying to use you for. So it's a little harder to catch, but they go back to it, right? And then the next thing happens where you're like, wait, this feels imbalanced. Like I feel depleted. I feel tired engaging with this person. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I have to mute myself and like I'm shrinking in size engaging with this person. I don't know why that is. And so maybe they sense that you're pulling away again and they're still using you. They're still manipulating you. They're still using you for whatever that want is at that foundational level. And then they say, you know, I'm just having really financial difficult times and that's been taking up a lot of my bandwidth. Like, do you have the capacity to hear me on this? It's just like, I've never experienced this before, right? And even though the relationship has skewed to a point where you are just their dumping zone, like there is no reciprocity, like it is not mutual at all, like they are using you, you don't quite see it because now they're, and in that of saying like I'm having financial difficulties or saying as soon as I'm on the other side of this, like I'll be more available. Like I'm so sorry I've been a bad friend, but like as soon as I get through this, I'll be a better friend and a better work colleague, right? And so because there's this faking of what's going to happen in the future, you stay around and you stay in relationship with them, right? Let's say a third time it happens. It's, you know, there's a work dynamic going on that's stressing me out, or, you know, there's a family issue that's going on and it just keeps being a new thing. Also, it can be referred to as moving the goalpost, right? You never quite reach the end zone, but they're making this promise to you because they know that having that promise to you will keep you engaged in the dynamic of the relationship. And that can be, again, we're using an individual aspect. That can be a family aspect. If, you know, you stay engaged engage with the family, like, we'll finally resolve or this harmful thing, or I'll finally take accountability for this thing that has harmed you over the years I've never taken accountability for, but you got to do X, Y, and Z and we'll get there, right? It's just a matter of you need to engage in this way, but and we'll reach this goal that then as you approach it gets moved again, right? It can be at work where you are overworked and underpaid and they're telling, well, it's because we had budget cuts this quarter, but next quarter we're going to get new budgets. Stick around, as soon as we get there, like, it'll be okay. You get to the next quarter, oh, we had to refill this position, and so that impacted our bottom line, so unfortunately we can't give you a raise. Wait until quarter 4 and then, like, we'll be able to revisit it. You get to quarter 4, oh, we had these unexpected expenses, da 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 da. You see how it works. You keep moving the goalpost. It is future faking and it is manipulative. And the reason why I'm ending on this one is because I had to sit myself down and have this conversation, which is, if I were to have a friend come to me and say, hey, Jalen, I'm in this new relationship and we have been in relationship with each other for 250 days. And for all 250 of those days, they have been harmful to me. They've been undermining me. They've called me names. They haven't seen me for who I truly am. They've been exploiting me. They've been extracting from me. I feel like I'm shrinking and I'm not treated fairly and humanely, for 250 days. And then they were to say to me on day 251, but you know what? I still have hope. I still have hope that they're going to change. I still have hope that things can get better. I would be like, fam, like, here are the places I like to go to look up a mental health therapist, a mental health provider, right? Like, here's where I find my therapist. Would you be open to meeting with someone? Because I think you could really benefit from some support, right? Like, that would be a wildly unhealthy demographic, right? And when we look at the US, that will be celebrating the 250th year of existing, allegedly, in July, there has not been one single year where every demographic in the country of the United States, regardless of identities, regardless of gender, of age, of attractional orientation, of class, of religion, of language, of ethnic or country origin, regardless, there has not been a single year where every person has been treated humanely, with respect and equitably, and with rights. Not a single one of those years has that existed. And yet, I hear so often, we still have to keep hope alive. Now, I know what I just said is very controversial, and I know a lot of people will be like, no, that's a problem. We've made progress, and like, you got to stick with it, and there's progress, and da-da-da. Did we? Or did tactics change, and is it future faking? What progress? Because see, the voting rights that were fought for have been, the majority of them have been undone in the span of a year. Wait, are we at a year? Okay, we just made a year. But they finished it in less than a year. Civil rights, constitutional rights infringed on blatantly in the span of less than a year. DEI undone. Folks overwhelmingly fired. The staggering number, the last I heard for Black women being fired and no longer having a job was at 500,000. That's the last time I checked, and that was a few months ago. Just overwhelmingly and in the span of less than a year. That's how easy it was to undo and to send us backwards. And there's not been a single year where every human in the country of the United States has been treated with respect, with dignity, humanely, and equitably. Not one single year in existence. Why am I falling for future faking? Okay, on that note, that is where I'm going to conclude. It's a long video, and I'm looking at the time. I'm probably going to break this up as part 1 and part 2 because ain't no way I'm uploading all of that as one. Maybe, I don't know. But I just want to say that, in conclusion of that my experiences in engaging with individuals, family structures, workplaces, and in a country that are foundationally operating from a high level of narcissistic traits, it just sucks the life out of you. You are used as an object to meet an agenda, and then you are discarded like you are trash and nothing. And I believe firmly that for myself and for you and for us as a community and as a society, we were created with beautiful, powerful purposes. We are created for so much more than that. And even if the only thing we were created for was for joy, that is enough, and we are deserving of living fully and entirely in that. We are not here to serve the purpose of individuals, family structures, workplaces, industries, and definitely not countries that are operating from this as a foundation to be used, abused, manipulated, dehumanized, and discarded like trash. That is not what we exist for. So for me, I left. I no longer engage individual, if the family structure that dynamic is there, at a workplace, and sure as hell not in a country that's operating for that as a foundation. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it anymore. And I really hope that more and more people choose this as well. On that note, I'm gonna finish this very long video, again, which will probably be 2 videos. Any thoughts that come up, anything that resonates, anything you wanna add, anything that you believe differently on, please feel free to comment in the comment section. And until the next video.